Storm clouds gathered like an omen, swallowing the plane whole as thunder tore through the cabin. The engines screamed their protest, metal groaned against the fury of nature, while passengers gripped the armrests with white knuckles. A woman in designer clothes struggled to keep her cool, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the leather as fear etched itself across his face. Not far away, a man with hands marked by time and a soldier protected the elderly passenger next to him, his eyes cold in computers even as chaos erupted. The plane plummeted toward the waters dark below, and then nothing but darkness and the roar of the ocean claiming its prize. He woke up with the sand in her mouth and the waves lapping at her feet. The Ace's designer dress was torn, her hair-blonde hair soaked in salt and seaweed. Next to her, the man moved, spitting water, salty as consciousness returned. They were alone on an endless expanse of beach. The debris scattered like promises, broken along the shore. His voice trembled, barely a whisper against the vast emptiness. "If we can't go back, I have to marry you." The question hung between them, absurd and yet somehow prophetic, as if fate itself had already written their story in the sand. Marcus Ease had spent 35 years learning to survive. His body bore the map of that education, scars from Afghanistan, hands calloused from work on the construction site, shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of single fatherhood. The sun had baked his skin until it was bronze during countless hours on construction sites, trying to make ends meet for her 7-year-old daughter, Emma. She was everything now. It had been since cancer had taken Sarah away 3 years earlier. The pain had aged him, carving wrinkles around eyes that had seen too much death. But he had also refined his purpose. Every dawn it was for Emma, every tired evening, another day closer to giving her life that deserved it. Victoria Sterling inhabited a completely different universe. At 30, for years he commanded the boardrooms with the same precision with which his mother had once commanded the galas of Carity. His blue eyes could freeze negotiations or close multi-million-dollar deals depending on what the quarterly reports demanded. Sterling's fortune had shaped her from birth. Private schools, MBA, AIL, a corner office before the age of 28. Love had been a luxury that she couldn't afford, especially after James had chosen her rival's bed and the biggest competitor to his father as a new employer. Trust had become a liability, the vulnerability, a weakness he had surgically removed from his emotional wallet. They were oil and water, war and trade, corns and manicures. He knew how to read the winds and follow the animal tracks. He could read market trends and spot insider trading. His hands had held dying soldiers. His had never held anything heavier than platinum credit cards. And yet, there they were on that nameless shore, stripped of everything that had defined them as equal in their mortality. The island didn't care about their wealth or their purple heart. It only cared about them being fragile human beings, that they needed water within 3 days or they would die. The first instinct for victory was denial, masquerading as authority. She pulled out her soaked phone, shaking it like if corporate determination could revive dead circuits. "The Guard Coastal will find us," declared the voice that still carried authority from room to meeting, despite the teeth that they were beating. "My company has resources. They'll have helicopters looking for us within a few hours." Marcus didn't respond immediately, instead walking along the edge of the beach by reading the signs. She could not see the height of the line tide, the direction of debris dispersion, the total absence of human footprints other than their own. His trained eyes cataloged resources, bunches of bamboo, coconut palms, a stream of fresh water flowing down from the edge of the jungle. Finally, he turned to her, who was still clutching the phone as useless as a talisman. "We need shelter before sunset," he said simply. "Fire, water, food." In this order, she laughed bitterly with a hint of hysteria. "I'm sure that someone will see us before we have to play Robinson Crusoe, maybe," he conceded. He was already gathering firewood, but hypothermia didn't wait for rescue plans. The first collision came when she tried to assert control by falling back on the only power scheme she knew. "I managed crisis situations before. I supervised." "You haven't supervised anything like this." His interruption was calm but definitive. "Out here, there are no proxies, no assistants, no advice to convince. There's only work and survival." She wanted to discuss, remind him that he had negotiated with a Fortune 500 CEO. who had rebuilt his company's Asian division from zero, but the words died as she watched him tear away the bark with his bare hands, creating tinder with precision practice. Her designer heels sank into the sand with every step, and when she stumbled, the sharp coral it tore through the Italian leather and penetrated the heel. The blood stood out vividly against the white sand, real in a way his world had never been. Marcus knelt beside she without hesitation, tearing strips from her shirt to bandage the wound. Her hands were gentle, despite their rudeness, and for the first time since the disaster she felt something other than fear orange her. It could have been gratitude, it could have been something else. Thanks, he managed to say the foreign words on his tongue. He just nodded and went back to building their shelter, leaving her wondering when was the last time she had thanked someone for something that could not be invoiced. By the third day, Victoria had learned that nature did not negotiated. The sun rose and set at its own pace, indifferent to his internal clock, still set to New York time. Marcus had built a hut out of bamboo and palm leaves, engineering it with the same precision she had at time applied to spreadsheets. She watched him work, noting how he used thelianas like ropes, how he tilted the roof to let the rain run off, how he positioned the shelter to block the wind, but to capture the morning light. His contribution that first day had been to collect firewood, even if it took him 3 tries to tell the difference between dry wood and simply dead wood. His hands, soft from years of creams and professional manicures, they had filled with blisters within hours. Initially, she hid it, ashamed of her weakness, but Marcus noticed it anyway. He showed her like wrapping them in torn cloth, like squeezing with the palms instead of the fingers. Fire was their first shared victory. Marcus had built a bow drill out of bamboo and lianas, but his hands were shaking from the tired after hours of trying. Without thinking, Victoria took control of the constant pressure while he regulated the speed. And together they let out smoke, then embers, then finally flame from friction. When the wood caught, she actually laughed. Not laughter, elegant cocktail party, but something raw and genuine. I didn't feel so fulfilled since I made my first hostile climb, she admitted, then bit her tongue in embarrassment from the comparison. But Marcus smiled, a rare expression that transformed his lined face. Fire is more useful some cards here. Their first meal was fish he'd caught in the shallows, cooked over their hard-earned fire. It was barely edible, burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. But she ate every bit of it, bite. He discovered that hunger was the best condiment he had never wanted to taste. That night the storm struck without warning. One moment the stars were clear. The next the rain was pounding the shelter like bullets. The leaf roof held for exactly 10 minutes before the rain began to rain down, inside. Lightning turned the beach into a flashing nightmare, and Victoria found herself crushed against Marcus's back, shaking not from the cold, but from primal fear. "We're fine," he murmured, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I've passed by worse." He wanted to ask where, how, but the thunder swallowed his questions. Instead, he focused on his breathing, using its rhythm to calm his pounding heart. Dawn broke, found them soaked but alive, and she realized he had slept. He had actually slept, feeling safer in presence of that stranger than she had ever felt in her penthouse with its state-of-the-art security system. Trust, he discovered, wasn't about contracts or background checks. Sometimes it was just someone staying steadfast as your world crumbled. The fourth night brought an expectant honesty. They sat feeding the fire with small twigs, the ocean providing the white noise of nature. Victoria She had spent the day failing at weaving a basket, her fingers refusing to cooperate with Marcus's patient instructions. Frustration had almost brought her to tears, not because of the basket, but because failure was not something she had ever allowed herself in recent years. "Because so calm about all this?" he asked finally, pointing to their primitive camp, their isolation, their uncertain future. Marcus stared into the flames for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memories he usually kept them buried. Afghanistan 2009. Our convoy struck on Monday outside Kandahar. 3 days in hostile territory with 2 wounded, awaiting extraction, which almost didn't arrive. He stopped adding another twig to the fire. After that, everything else is just a glitch. She absorbed these words, trying to reconcile the quiet man next to her with that level of violence and survival. How do you not let yourself break? It made me broken. The mission was calm but unyielding. Return home to Emma, my daughter, was what put me back together. Maybe in a different form, but functioning. The mention of his daughter changed something in her expression, softening the hard lines. Victoria recognized that expression. She had seen it in mirrors when she thought about the life she would never have, had time to live. "Tell me about her," he said, surprised by her sincere curiosity. His smile was immediate and transformative. 7 years old, but looking like he's 40, he reads all this. That comes to her hands. She wants to become a marine biologist or a princess or both, depending on the day. His voice cracked slightly. His mother died 3 years ago. Breast cancer. Emma doesn't remember much, which is also a blessing and a curse. Victoria felt those words tug at something deep in his chest. "I'm sorry." He turned to look at her too directly. "And you? What breaks someone who seems unbreakable?" She almost sidetracked. He almost retreated behind the corporate language and measured distances, but the firelight and the isolation made it the least dangerous honesty. "I've never had anyone truly see me. Not my parents who saw a duty, not James who saw a step. I don't even see myself anymore, only the role I play." "I see you," he said, simply Marcus. The words hung suspended between them, heavy with possibility. Victoria felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with their circumstances, primitive. She had been naked in rooms, meetings full of hostile investors, and had felt less observed than he was at that moment, with torn designer clothes, dirty hair, and broken nails. "This terrifies me," he admitted. "Well," he replied, "terror keeps you honest." They remained insolence after, watching the sparks rise toward stars that seemed incredibly bright, without light pollution. For the first time in her adult life, Victoria wasn't planning her next quarter, the next acquisition, the next offensive strategy. It was just present, existed in the space between one breath and another, between a heartbeat and its echo. Tomorrow would brought new challenges, food to find, water to collect, endless work of survival. But that night he was learning that sometimes the most precious thing you could possess was someone who saw through all your armor to the scared, hopeful human underneath. The storm came on their 10th day like an angry god. Marcus, he had seen it grow in the cloud formations. The way the birds had become silent, like the air pressure made his old wounds ache. He tried to reinforce their shelter, but bamboo and hope were poor defenses against the fury of nature. It struck at midnight 20 that they could have been hurricane force for all they knew. Their shelter blew up at the first burst, sending palm fronds whipping through the air like blades. Victoria screamed. She also felt the wind above her as debris hit her leg, opening a wound that bled immediately. Marcus carried her halfway, dragging her to a cluster of rocks he had noticed days before. A small cave just big enough for two, they squeezed inside as the rain turned the beach into a river, while the waves rose higher than seemed possible, reaching out to them with foaming fingers. In the morning their camp was gone. All the hearth, the collected food, the water collectors that had built missing or destroyed. Victoria's leg was worse than he thought. The cut was deep and already showing signs of infection in the tropical heat. He was burning with fever by noon, slipping in and out of consciousness, calling out to people he didn't know. There were. "James, no, the contract is not," he muttered then more clearly. "Mom, I'm trying to be perfect." "I'm trying." Marcus felt helpless, creep in. That familiar enemy from the traumas of war. But this wasn't Afghanistan, and it wouldn't lose. Another person from whom he had learned what? To hold. The words seemed inadequate for the fierce protection that was boiling inside him. He had seen plants that the locals in Afghanistan used for the wounds, and he had noticed similar ones here. It was a risk, but he did nothing. It was certain death. He left her in the shade with their last fresh water and immersed himself in the jungle he had avoided, without a machete and desperate. 3 hours of searching, cutting his hands on the vines, making his way through the vegetation. Finally, he found what seemed right broad leaves with the same distinctive smell, bark that peeled off in medicinal strips, the crushed together with stones, creating a primitive mixture that could save her or do nothing. She was worse when she returned, her skin burning, her lips chapped, despite the water she had left. She cleaned the wound with water of the sea. She screamed and fought him weakly. Then she applied the paste, tying it with strips of what remained of his shirt. Then came the weight. He held her tight all night as she shook and burned in cycles, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Stay with me, Victoria. Emma has to meet you. You have to. Tell her about board meetings and hostile takeovers. Make them sound like fairy tales. Stay with me. Dawn brought broken fever and clear eyes. She looked at him with such naked gratitude that it physically hurt, like staring directly into the sun. You saved me, whispered Roka's voice. We saved each other, he corrected, because it was true, in more ways than she knew. The healing was slow, intimate in ways that transcended physical proximity. He had to help her walk, wash, tasks that stripped away any remaining pretensions between them. She learned his body language, as well as his jaw would tense before tropical storms, as his hands would stop when he thought of Emma. She learned hers as she hummed Chopin when she was anxious, as she still searched to check a wrist where there was no longer a watch. After 3 weeks, he managed to spear his first fish. The triumph on her face was so pure, so completely disconnected from his business victories, that he kissed her, without thinking. He simply pressed his salt-chapped lips to his little boy's in celebrations. Perfect moment. She stiffened, then kissed him with an intensity that suggested that she was waiting for that permission to be human, to want something that could not be quantified in relationships quarterly. When they broke apart, she laughed brightly and surprised. If we weren't stuck here, HR would have opinions on this, thankfully. The human resources have no jurisdiction here, he replied, brushing her sandy hair from behind her ear, with fingers that had built shelters, lit fires, saved her life. He took her hand, examining the calluses and scars as if they were precious texts. These hands have done more real things than mine. Your hands are learning, he observed. Look at them now. He did, seeing the cuts and calluses, the broken nails, and the sun damage. Hands that had worked, really worked, for the first time. I don't recognize them. I do, Marcus said softly. They're the hands of someone who survives. That night, she taught him the leverage ball while they cleaned the fish, making them look like warrior strategies. He taught her to read the stars for navigation, to find true north when all else was lost. They were teaching themselves languages they had never needed before. It's made of earth and resistance, his ambition and success. The irony that he had traveled the world for retreats did not escape her. Corporate, designed to build trust and teamwork, spending thousands on exercises and facilitators. Yet there, with nothing but need and time, he had learned more about collaboration than any consultant could have. I could teach her. I was so angry at first, she admitted one evening, looking at the sunset painting the ocean gold. Angry about the accident, for being helpless with you, for being so capable when I wasn't. And now he was really thinking about it. He was thinking about it seriously. Now I'm grateful not for the accident, but for what it showed me. I was successful but not alive, profitable but not present. Marcus understood. The war had taught him similar lessons about what mattered when everything else was being torn away. But he had Emma, a reason to return to, a reason to continue choosing life. Victoria was slowly drowning out his success, and it had taken a literal disaster to teach her to swim. The night everything changed started with Marcus deciding they had needed a better water source. The small stream was becoming brackish, too close to the ocean, and the spring she had noticed on the cliff promised cleaner, more reliable fresh water. Victoria wanted calm, she insisted, but he could see how she still favored her injured leg. I'll be back before dark, he promised, kissing her forehead in a gesture that had become habitual, precious in his simplicity. The cliff was higher than it appeared. The more fragile rocks. Halfway up, reaching for the next ledge, the ledge collapsed. He fell only 10 feet, but his ankle got caught in a crack, twisting until he heard the crack. The pain was immediate and nauseating, his vision going white at the edges. He was stuck, really stuck. His leg stuck in a corner that sent fire through her nervous system with every attempt to move. The sun, he traced his path across the sky as he tried everything using his belt as leverage, chipping rocks with his bare hands, but nothing worked. Then he heard his voice carried on the wind. Marcus, where are you? Here, he shouted. Hoarse voice. The cliff, but not she was already climbing. He could hear the rocks crackling. When his face appeared above of him, crooked and determined, his first feeling was relief, followed immediately from terror. You can't. Your leg hasn't healed yet. Enough. Shut up, she said firmly, already assessing the situation with the same concentration she once applied to hostile takeovers. Tell me what to do. They worked on the problem. She found a strong branch to use as leverage. She used the vines he had taught her to braid to make a rope. When he had to put all his weight against his trapped leg to free it, the pain nearly made him faint, but her voice kept him conscious. A constant stream of encouragement and surprisingly creative curse words. When he was finally free, she carried him halfway down, both of them sliding, leaving skin on the rocks. On the beach, they screamed, breathing heavily, their bodies trembling for adrenaline and exhaustion. Her ankle was definitely broken, already swollen, purple, and black. You would have died climbing up there, he said, still processing that she had risked everything for him. You would have died if I hadn't done it? He replied simply. The pragmatic truth said in her boardroom voice made him laugh despite the pain. Then she kissed him fiercely and desperately with the taste of fear and relief and something deeper than gratitude. I love you, he said against her mouth, the words torn from a deep place. I know it's crazy. I know we're just bonding over trauma or whatever psychological term applies. But I love you and I almost lost you. And I need you to know that. He pulled her closer with his good arm. This woman, bright, broken, beautiful, who had learned to make fire and fish with a spear and climb cliffs, told him, I love you too. Since when did you try to use your phone as a hammer that third day? She laughed, she cried on his shoulder, and they stood there as the sun set. Two people, damaged ones that had found wholeness in the last place anyone would think to look for it. If we die here, he said finally. At least we have lived before. We do not die here, promise. Even if his ankle throbbed as a counter-argument. Emma has to meet the woman who will teach her about hostile takeovers, and I have to meet the girl who will teach me. Will teach about sea creatures. Victoria added, the future seemed suddenly possible again. Even probable, even necessary. They built the signal fire at dawn, using every piece of dry wood they collected, adding green fronds of palm for the smoke. Victoria had become expert in maintaining the flames, in making them rise higher, while Marcus, immobilized by his broken ankle, directed the construction of a reflector with metal recovered. The fishing boat appeared on the horizon at noon, a blur dark that could have been anything. Victoria frantically stoked the fire, adding more green fuel, until the column of smoke rose black and thick into the clear sky. He screamed until he was getting hoarse. He waved a makeshift flag with Marcus's torn shirt, ran back and forth on the beach like a woman possessed. The boat changed course. Marcus watched it collapse on the sand, crying with relief, and thought that he had never seen anything more beautiful than her tears. They were survived 43 days, had counted them with heels on bamboo, and now the world was coming back to claim them. The fishermen were Colombian, working in international waters and speaking little English, but the rescue had not translation needed. They wrapped them in blankets that felt incredibly soft. They gave them water that tasted strange after weeks of filtered rain and coconut milk. The journey to civilization took 18 hours, during which Victoria never let go of Marcus's hand, as if afraid he might disappear if she loosened her grip. The Panama City Hospital was a shock of white walls and machines, of forms to fill out and calls to make. Victoria's assistant cried on the phone. She said the entire company was looking for them, that her service funeral was scheduled for the following week. Marcus called his sister, who was raising Emma, and had to hang up when his daughter's voice asking for Daddy made him sob too loud to speak. Then came the bill. Their rescue made the news. International, CEO and single father survived 6 weeks on a desert island. Photographers waited outside from the hospital, wanting photos of the love story that everyone insisted on seeing. But when the documents arrived, resignation, when real life called them with its obligations and social stratifications, they found themselves in the hospital lobby as strangers again. I have a car waiting for me, Victoria said, her voice carefully neutral. Back in New York. Emma is in Boston, Marcus replied, equally cautious. At my sister's house, it was oil and water again. Different worlds, different lives. The island had been a parenthesis, a pause in their true stories. Wasn't that so? This is crazy, he said finally. Victoria. But she was smiling through her tears. We have nothing in common except being almost dead. We have everything in common that matters, Marcus replies, taking her hand. He took her, held her, studied their intertwined fingers, his dark and marked, they her pale and healing. Your daughter will hate me. I know nothing about children, you'll learn. You've learned to spear fish. Your world will bore me. Mine world will root you. We will fail. We might, he agreed. But we survived a plane crash and 6 weeks on an island. I like our odds. She kissed him then in the middle of the hospital hall in front of photographers, nurses, God, and everyone. It smelled of possibility. Yes, they separated that afternoon, but with plans to meet again in a week. 7 days to get back to their lives and to see if what they had found was real or just island fever. 7 days to decide if the love forged in the extreme could survive normality. New York immediately consumed Victoria. The council, he wanted briefings. The media wanted statements, and his apartment looked like a museum of someone who was, it was once. Designer clothes that now seemed absurd. Shoes that were worth more than Marcus probably earned in a month. A bed so soft, it felt like drowning. 3 days after the bailout, he attended his first board meeting, watching executives discuss market share and projections for the fourth quarter. Harold Steinberg was proposing another acquisition. Aggressive. The kind that would cut 200 jobs but boost the stock price. 6 weeks ago, she would lead the attack. Victoria prompted Harold with his thoughts about the acquisition of Cheney Industries. She looked at their expectant faces. These, people-soft ones who had never been hungry, never scared, never built anything with their own hands. I think that we should explore partnership instead of acquisition. Retain their workforce, their corporate culture, building something together instead of consuming it. The room fell silent. Harold's face darkened. That's not Sterling Industries' style. Maybe. It should be, she replied calmly. After the meeting, her phone vibrated, with messages from Marcus. Photo of Emma holding a sign that read, "Welcome home, Dad," with the crayons. A video of them at the aquarium. Emma explaining to Marcus why octopuses were the most ocean smarts. Another message. He wants to know when he can meet the lady he helped. Dad coming home. Victoria cried in her office, her corner office, overlooking Manhattan. A testament to all he had accomplished, and all that suddenly seemed empty. Boston was simpler. Marcus returned to his apartment with 2 bedrooms at his construction job that the boss had saved for him. From Emma, who didn't give up his leg for the first full day. His sister Maria had questions about the island, about survival, on the CEO whose photo was everywhere next to his. He's not your type, Maria said cautiously, watching him. Help Emma with her homework. I don't have a type anymore, he replied. I have Victory. Emma looked up from her math paper. Is she beautiful? Very beautiful. She's kind. She's learning to be one. She likes fish. Marcus laughed, remembering the first Victoria's successful harpoon. She's tricky with fish. Emma considered it seriously. I want meet her. 3 days into their week apart, Victoria called at midnight. I can't sleep in. This bed is too soft. I put a blanket on the floor, but it's not the same. I know, he said, because he knew. Emma asked me why this morning I was checking the wind models. The board thinks I'm crazy. I suggested reducing the executive bonuses to increase worker safety protocols. Maria thinks it will break my heart. I could, Victoria admitted. Not on purpose, but I don't know how. Things of a normal relationship, Nunzio, Marcus reminded her. Sarah and I were high school sweethearts. I've never dated as an adult, especially not as a single father. We're a mess in waiting for it to happen. They probably stayed on the phone without speaking, just breathing together 300 miles away. Finally, Victoria spoke. He bought a ring. Marcus sat up abruptly. What? Not for you. For me. Done. Of aluminum recovered from the plane. A reminder that I am different now. That I want to stay different. But when I look at him, I only think of you. Come to Boston, he said suddenly. Meet Emma tomorrow. See my real life. It's Tuesday, I have meetings. He stopped, laughed. Who cares about meetings? Yes, I'll come. Victoria stopped in front of Marcus's apartment building, holding a stuffed animal in her hand, octopus-shaped and questioning every decision that had brought her there. The building was old, popular, with graffiti on the brick and a door that took 3 tries to open. His apartment was on the 3rd floor. No elevator. Emma opened the door, 7 years old, with Marcus's dark eyes and a serious expression. He studied Victoria for a long moment, then announced, "She's wearing the wrong shoes for Boston." Victoria looked at her designer loafers. "What shoes should I what to wear? Sneakers or boots? Something for walking. Dad says he's learned walking on an island, but Boston has different rules." Emma Marcus appeared behind his daughter. Let her come in first. The apartment was small, clean, full of Emma's drawings and photos of a woman who was supposed to be Sarah. Victoria felt like an intruder, too refined. Too much. But then Emma took her hand, pulled her to the kitchen table covered in science books. "Dad says you lived on an island. Have you seen cephalopods?" "What have I seen?" "Octopuses, squid, cuttlefish, cephalopods." "Oh yes, actually small octopuses in tide pools." The Emma's eyes widened. "Really? What color? How many arms? Did you know? Which can change not only color, but also consistency." For the next hour, Emma quizzed her about marine life, correcting her. Terminology, sharing facts with the intensity of someone 3 times his age. Marcus cooked dinner, plain spaghetti, and Victoria realized that this was her real life. Small apartment, brilliant daughter, making ends meet. "I didn't fit here," he said softly while Emma was in the bathroom. "You still don't fit," he corrected. "Marcus, I didn't fit in on your island either." After dinner, Emma fell asleep, on Victoria's shoulder, watching a documentary about coral reefs. Marcus carried her to bed, and Victoria. He watched from the door as he tucked her in, kissed her forehead, whispered something to her that made the little girl smile in her sleep. "She likes you," he said, finding Victoria on his little balcony later. "She likes that I saw the octopus." Same thing pulled her closer, and she realized it smelled different there. Less salt, more city, but still fundamentally Marcus. "This is my life, Victoria. This apartment, this life, this daughter who needs stability and routine and someone who won't go away." "I know," she said, even though the weight of it terrified her. "I need you to see who that's me too. The real version, not the island one." So he came to New York the next day, bringing Emma, who had insisted on skipping school for this adventure. Victoria's attic, he kept them both silent. The space, the view, the casual wealth. "It's bigger in every way than our entire building," Emma whispered. Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. "But your house has something mine doesn't." "What?" "Life. Your drawings, your books, your father's coffee mug collection. This place is just an expensive void." Emma thought about it. You could take some drawings. 2 do good. The meeting room was more difficult. Victoria had to attend a crucial meeting, and Marcus saw it in full CEO mode. Sharp, decisive, wielding power like a blade, he demolished Harold's proposals with precision. He restructured a division into failure in real time. She reminded everyone why she was the youngest CEO in the company's history. Afterward, in the elevator, Marcus remained silent. Too much. He asked for victory. Vulnerable despite his victory. "No," he said slowly. "It's just seeing all of you. It's like watching you harpoon that first fish, except fish are corporations." Emma, who was coloring in a corner during the meeting, he looked up. It was boring. It seemed boring. Incredibly boring. Victoria agreed, and Marcus laughed. They spent the afternoon at the Natural History Museum. Emma dragged them through the ocean exhibits. Victoria, he bought every book he could lay his eyes on until Marcus intervened. They looked like family, he realized, catching their reflection. Uneven, complicated, but somehow fitting. That night, after Emma fell asleep in Victoria's guest room, her first time in a bed which cost more than Marcus earned in 3 months, they stopped on the terrace. The city lights were lay beneath them. "I'm selling the penthouse," Victoria said suddenly. "I'm moving to Boston. I can run the company remotely or find something else." Marcus turned her around to look at her face. "You don't give up on who you know. We'll find common ground. Where is the common ground between this and that?" "We will build it," he said simply. "How?" "Did we build that shelter piece by piece?" Victoria traced the scar on her hand since those early days. "Do you really think we can make this work? A CEO and a worker, Eddie, AA penthouse and a third-floor apartment with no elevator, meeting rooms, and a bulldozer. I think we've already done that." "The impossible," Marcus replied. "We survived. Everything else is just details." 6 months later, Victoria was standing in her redesigned office, the same corner, but now with Emma's drawings framed next to the company awards. A photo of the island next to the Diploma MBA. Had restructured Sterling Industries by implementing what the business papers called radical humanistic capitalism, even if she simply called it common sense. Learned the hard way, Marcus had started his own construction business with a loan she had provided, building sustainable homes that joked they were resistant to the disasters tested on the island. Emma spent the weekend with them in the brownstone in Brooklyn they had bought together. Not a penthouse, not a third floor without an elevator, but something in between. "There's a documentary crew," her manager informed her, assistant. "They want to film your story. Survival on the island, the love story, corporate transformation." Victoria thought, then shook her head. "Tell them no. Some stories aren't made for the cameras." That evening, they met at Emma's school science fair. He had built a model tropical island ecosystem complete with tide pools and sustainable shelters. "My dad has lived here," she explained to the judges, "and my future mother helped him survive." Future mother. Victoria, he felt those words like a physical touch. He found Marcus in the crowd, raised his left hand where the ring was recovered aluminum had been joined by something more traditional, something that meant promises beyond survival. He smiled, that rare, full smile that was appeared for the first time in the firelight, and mouthed, "If we can't go back." She replied with her lips, "Should I marry you?" Emma won first prize. They celebrated with a pizza, the three. They laughed at Emma's detailed explanation of cephalopod intelligence. Marcus teased Victoria for her continued inability to weave baskets. Victoria threatened to make them all attend a meeting of the advice as punishment. Later, walking through the streets of Brooklyn with Emma in their midst, each one holding one hand, Victoria thought about the question she had asked that first morning. Desperate, delirious, accidentally prophetic. "If we can't go back, I have to marry you." The answer, it turned out, was at the same time simpler and more complex than survival. The answer was to choose to build something new from the rubble of what had been. The answer was Emma's hand in his, Marcus's smile. In the light of the street lamps, the promise of ordinary mornings, and an extraordinary love. A year later, they returned, all 3 of us on the island, a rental boat, and adequate supplies. Emahi bounced with excitement at seeing where his father had lived, where victory had changed, where their family had truly begun. The shelter was gone, obviously reclaimed by the wind and vegetation, but the hearth remained. Stones that had been placed in a circle now smoothed by time. Emma ran on the beach collecting shells, pointing out tide pools, giving lectures on, and with the authority of a 7-year-old girl. "This is where you ask the question," Marcus said, standing where they had been wake up for the first time. "If we can't go back," Victoria began. "I have to marry you," he concluded. "And the answer was yes," she said, "although it took me a while to figure it out." Marcus pulled out a small box. knelt down on the sand where he had once knelt to bandage them, the wounds. So now I ask you officially, with Emma as a witness, with the island as a witness, Victoria Sterling, will you marry me? Not because we can't go back, but because we choose to move forward. Emma screamed, jumped up and down, shouted yes with all the frankness of childhood. Victoria looked at this man who had taught to light a fire, to fish with a spear, to trust another human being with one's own survival. He thought about their messy, complicated, beautiful life. Board meetings and construction sites, attic views and school science fairs, cutting boards and work boots. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Although I should warn you, I don't know how to weave baskets yet. And I don't know how to read spreadsheets yet, Marcus replied, making her slip the ring onto her finger. Not salvaged aluminum this time, but something that shone with promise. Emma, she performed the ceremony there using the power given to her by the ocean and a script she apparently had prepared. They exchanged vows that mentioned quarterly reports and tidal patterns, hostile takeovers and hurricane shelters, promising to love each other both in boardrooms and on the beaches. At sunset, while the sky was painted with shades of hope, they sat down next to their old fireplace, Emma between them, and they watched the stars emerge, the same stars that had witnessed their struggle, their survival, their surrender to something greater than themselves. "Tell me the story again," Emma demanded, even though they knew by heart about the plane and the island and falling in love. So they told the story together, interrupting each other, arguing over details, laughing at memories that once were desperate. As one, he learned to scale fish. As a construction worker, learned to navigate corporate politics. As two people from different worlds discovered that love was his form of survival. The boat would return for them the next day. It would have brought them back to their complicated, imperfect, wonderful life. But that night, they were just a family on a beach under the stars who didn't care about net worth or social status, telling stories by firelight, holding hands in the space where worlds collided and love was born. If we can't go back, Victoria thought, looking at his daughter. She was his daughter now. In every way that matters, drew patterns in the sand, while Marcus added wood to their memorial fire. We can only go, let's move forward together. Building something new from whatever rubble we find, creating refuge in the most unlikely, discovering that sometimes the best adventures start with a crash, and the most beautiful love stories, deep ones, begin with a question asked in delirium that turns out to be the best thing ever said. The island there, he held back for another night. This family, forged in the extreme, tempered by ordinary life, made stronger from being broken and rebuilt, tomorrow would bring back reality. Meetings and tasks, deadlines and dance recitals, all the beautiful daily chaos of a life truly lived. But that night they were timeless, eternal, complete. One who had learned to survive, a worker who had learned to trust, a little girl who had gained a mother and an island who had given them everything by taking everything away before. The fire crackled its ancient song, the waves whispered their eternal promise, and somewhere apart, in the vast night of the Pacific, their story became legend, not because it was perfect, but because it was true. Love is found in the last place anyone would look, built from nothing but need, and from the trust and the crazy hope that some things, once survived together, create bonds that no one civilization can break. If we can't go back, I have to marry you. Yes, always, inevitably, impossibly, perfectly. Yes,